Have you ever just stopped and wondered what it was like to be a kid, say, thousands of years ago? It kind of seems impossible to know, right? Well, you're in luck, because today we are officially becoming history detectives, and we're about to uncover some amazing secrets from the past. So let's start digging. I mean, just think about it for a second. There were no photos, no videos, definitely no internet. So how in the world do we have any idea what they ate for breakfast or what games kids played? It's like this giant, epic puzzle, and we're about to find all the missing pieces. To crack this case, we're going to go on a 4-part mission. First up, we'll get a peek into their daily lives. Then, we'll figure out where they decided to build their homes. After that, we'll uncover the really cool story behind a very famous name. And finally, the best part, we'll learn all about the detective work that makes any of this possible. Okay, mission part 1. What did people actually do all day way back then? Let's take a little sneak peek into their world. You know, it's pretty incredible what we can find out. We can figure out what was on their dinner plates, what kind of clothes they were wearing, and even what their houses looked like. But it gets even cooler. We can actually discover the games kids played, the spooky stories they must have told around the fire, and maybe even the songs they all sang together. And listen, this isn't just about kings and queens. We're talking about everybody. We can follow the trail of a skilled hunter who was called an archaeologist. We can see what a farmer was busy growing, discover what a powerful ruler was planning, and even get a glimpse of the amazing art and science people were creating. All right, detective, it's time for our next big clue. We know a little bit about what people were up to, so now let's figure out where they actually decided to set up shop and call home. Have you ever looked at a map of ancient civilizations? You might notice that all the big cities seem to be right next to a river. That is definitely not a coincidence. So what was the big deal with living by the water? Well, here's the secret. Rivers were like ancient supermarkets. I mean, you had all the fresh water you could drink, tons of fish for food, and the soil all around it was super rich and perfect for growing crops. Basically, everything you could possibly need to survive and build a community was right there for the taking. And you can actually see how this progressed over time. If we go way back, about 8,000 years ago, people started farming wheat and barley up in the hills. Then, fast forward a few thousand years, and boom, the very first cities pop up along the Indus River. And then, around 2,500 years ago, we start seeing huge cities and even a super powerful kingdom sprouting up all along the Ganga River. Okay, it's time for part 3 of our big mission, the story of a name. Have you ever wondered where the names India and Bharat even came from? Turns out, it's a pretty cool story. So we've got 2 different stories here. The name India actually comes from the Indus River, which, in the ancient language of Sanskrit, was called Sindhu. So when travelers from places like Iran and Greece showed up, they started calling the land India because of that river. But Bharat has a totally different origin story. It comes from a group of people called the Bharata, who were so important they were even written about in this incredibly old sacred book called the Rig Veda. And now for the final and maybe the most important part of our whole investigation. How do we know any of this stuff for sure? Well, it's time to meet the real-life history detectives. First up, we've got archaeologists. You really can think of them as detectives who dig in the dirt for clues. These are the folks who find everything from massive buried buildings to tiny little broken pots, all to piece together the incredible story of our past. But it's not all about digging. Our history detectives are also on the hunt for written clues, and they usually come in 2 main types. Each one tells a story, but in its own really special way. First, we have things called manuscripts, or pendulipi. These are literally ancient books that were written completely by hand. And forget about paper. They were written on things like dried palm leaves or the bark from a special tree. Can you even imagine? It's a miracle any of them survived all this time. And then, on the total opposite end, you have inscriptions, or abilekh. These are the exact opposite of those fragile manuscripts. We're talking about writing that was carved deep into hard surfaces like stone or metal. These things were made to last forever. Kings and queens would use them to brag about their big victories or to post new rules for everybody to see. Now, finding these clues is one thing, but actually reading them, that's a whole different challenge. Historians have to be like expert code breakers, figuring out these ancient languages like Sanskrit, Tamil, and also Prakrit, which was the everyday language that ordinary people spoke back then. So you see, every single clue, it doesn't matter how small it is, becomes a piece of this giant puzzle. A broken piece of pottery, a carved stone, a single old coin. They all help us see that bigger, amazing picture of our past.
I absolutely love this quote. It's such a great reminder that studying history is kind of like time travel. We're visiting a totally different world where everything, from the tools they used to the way they thought, was completely unique. So, here's a final thought I want to leave you with. Just imagine. It's 2,000 years in the future, and archaeologists are digging up your neighborhood, maybe even your room. What will your stuff tell them about you? What story will the clues of our time tell the people of the future? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?